Smart strategy, real conversations, bigger margins. This is Chasing the Margin podcast.
All right, well, welcome back to Chasing the Margin. Today we have Mr. Lee Colan. So, Lee, thank you for coming on, joining us.
My pleasure, Troy. Great to be here.
So, Lee, just tell us a little bit about your background, who you are as a person, and then we'll kind of dive more into that.
Sure. First and foremost, I'm a dad of three. That's the most important role in my life. Three growing kids at this point, so it's very rewarding to kind of be at that phase where you kind of turn from a parent into a coach, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So I've been doing this business for 26 years. My wife, Julie, and I co-founded it. And our goal is just to kind of equip and encourage leaders to be the best they can be, get the best out of themselves and others, ultimately. So we do that through a variety of different things. But I've been in Dallas for a long time. We love it here. And we get to work with good folks like you and A. Fairchild. And we love the Dallas market. And so that's just a little bit about us.
Yeah, well, you said you love the Dallas market. And doing a little bit of research about you, I saw that you went to Florida State. Is that right?
Yep.
That's where you met Julie, your wife?
I did. I had a mutual friend at the end of our junior year pull me aside and say, hey, would you mind voting for Julie? She's running for the president of the Psychology Honor Society next year. I was like, yeah, I don't care. I'm like, sure, I'll vote for it, whatever, right? And then that's the last I saw of her. Then the next semester we had class together, and I was like, oh, I kind of like her. And I didn't have much game with the ladies back in the day, so not that I do now either. But so I was like, well, I'm going to do something fun. So I kind of made up a persona, a guy named Herman von Wagner. And Herman was from Leipzig, Germany. It was a little inside joke. That's the birthplace of psychology. Pretty geeky, I know. And so I would start writing Julie these letters, and I put it in the little slot for the president of the Psychology, Honor Society president, put it in a little slot. And I'd say, I'm from Germany. I have a 2.0 grade point average. I'd like to get into the Honor Society. And Julie, she'd get those, and I all this is after the fact. I figure this out. She's so optimistic. She's like, well, maybe they have a different grade point system in Germany. Maybe he's really smart. Who knows? So she asked her professor, do we have a German exchange student this semester? I got lucky. We happened to. It wasn't Herman von Wagner. It was some other guy.
Gosh.
But she didn't look into it. She's like, okay, it must be legit. So we just went back and forth. I kept asking her kind of goofy questions, and so after about a month, I was like, okay, the roost is probably up. And, in today's day and age, I would call that fishing probably. So it was pretty innocent back then though. So I just turned to her in class one day and I just said, so how's Herman doing? And so she just looked at me with that look like of either disgust or surprise or whatever. I don't know what it was, but she's like, okay, this guy put in some effort. So that led to our first date. And so many 41 years later, 38 years of marriage, 3 kids and a business. So it was a pretty good gig. It worked out okay. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I was just reading about that, and I was laughing to myself reading through that story, thinking, what a way to introduce yourself to your wife.
Gutsy move. You got to take a bold chance at some point. So, no, it was fun. We've had lots of great stories over the years since then, and it's been a great ride together. So we're very fortunate. We've worked together for 26 years now, so
awesome.
It's been good.
And you didn't even want to give Herman a higher grade point average?
No, yeah, I know. Thought I'd have some fun with it and stuff. So anyway, so Herman's been part of our life for a long time now. So
awesome. So 26 years, you said you guys have been working together. Yeah. Tell us about what exactly you do and what you have going on with your business.
Yeah, we started this really. We viewed it as a ministry. We just said, how do we? When we started, I just kind of did some self-assessments and stuff and just said, who am I? And I just really came out to, I'm just a helper. I would like to serve people. So by the grace of God, we've had good educations and good experiences and all that. So how do I use those experiences, that education to serve others best? So I started this firm. Julie was still working, but a couple years after she joined, we started it. And we started in 1999, so we had the tech boom. Everything was great, right? So lots of good business. Companies were growing fast. We're helping companies manage the rapid growth. And then you know what happens after that, right? It goes right back down. So so we call our first year our investment year. We tell people when they're starting their own business, which is a euphemism for we didn't make any money, right? But, when you start out, you just got to be willing to, tell your story, get out there. And people got to know, okay, this guy's going to be around. He's not just in between jobs and stuff. So, but we really had the mindset of how do we just serve people well? How do we help them? We know there's not going to be remuneration at the end of every relationship. So how do we just help people, whether it's their kids are struggling, they're struggling, whatever it might be, just being good noticers and listening to people. I'm not kind of pushing what we do on them, just trying to help them. And so we really still take that mindset today. We really spend most of our time just trying to help people out. And whether there's ends up being a client or not, it's really less important. We just feel like if we plant those seeds, we'll sow it, we'll reap what we need to reap. So
Do you think that's the reason you chose psychology in the first place, is to try to understand people?
Yeah, you know what? We both did. We both psych majors. We enjoy that. We always had leadership roles. We love encouraging, equipping, and coaching people up. Even when we were youngsters, we just found that as a common theme in our lives. But it was funny because when I was in psychology, when I was trying to decide what kind of graduate school to go to, I was just like, I just want to do something. I just want to be in psychology, but I don't want to do anything I want to just help people. I don't want to have anything to do with business. That was what I was saying. I was just so naive. I didn't realize everything has to do with business. I don't care if you run a not-for-profit. You're still, it's a business. There are business aspects, right? Mm-hmm. So I ended up going into organizational psychology, which is really the closest thing aligned to business, is really understanding the motivations of people and how they work and how organizational dynamics work and all that. And as I was in the corporate world, I was an executive in HR for a while, and I was with consulting and Booz Allen and Mercer. And my bent was really understanding business first. And that actually ended up being a distinguishing feature of someone with my background, is to just understand the P&L, look at what's going on, and then how do we leverage the human side of it to make a difference in that for the business, right? So, so we've taken that approach, and that's served us well so far. So.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you on, like, everything is kind of like a business to a certain extent, because my background is, my dad's a pastor, and he's always been in that since I've been alive. Yeah. But to a certain level, a church is also run like a business.
That's
I mean, you have to at least have that structure, the financial guidance to an extent, to make sure that you're using your tools effectively to get to some type of end goal, which is, helping people is what a church is there for. In
fact, we've noticed in some of the churches we've either gone to or just observed, they actually are, I wouldn't say ruthless, but much more quick to make decisions. They open a new location, they've got some a pro forma. If it's not working, they shut it down, right? And because the truth is, they have a much greater responsibility to their donors, right? The people that are contributing every week. Okay, we can't just keep running something in the red. People are giving us their money. We have to be good stewards of that. And so we found that they're actually quite quick to make decisions like that, where some of our clients that maybe they're either public or private or whatever, sometimes there's not that same discipline there, honestly. And Julie worked at the National Center of the American Heart Association for years, and they were great about they knew that 90+% of every dollar they came in had to go toward direct programming. So their overhead was low. They made quick, tough decisions. And I think there's something to be said for that mindset of a not-for-profit saying, this is not our money. We've got to be good stewards of it. I think sometimes in the for-profit sector, we kind of forget that. It's just the money comes in through investors, through the public markets, whatever it might be. And sometimes there's not as a tight of a connection between, all right, something's not working, we need to kind of pull the cord on it. So
yeah. Do you think there's maybe something freeing about the fact that, with a church, it's and other people's money, it is kind of well, it's their money, you have to do it, so you just have that quick reaction, versus my business is my thing and I can do what I want, and maybe it's a little more constrained because of that.
That's right. I think when there's an external sense of accountability, it's okay, it's rather black and white. Okay, we can't keep taking people's money in if we're losing it, right? When it's your own, whether you're funding yourself, it's your own money, you're thinking, oh, well, I kind of like that guy on my staff. I really have known him for a while, but he's not working out, but I'm going to keep him around. Or we've been trying this program. We just try a little bit more, so you keep throwing good money after bad, Trust me, we've done it, right? Yeah. And so I think on your own, there's just more gray space there. And so those things tend to happen.
Yeah.
And people, listen, entrepreneurs also make great decisions. Many of the great companies we have now in the U.S. are from entrepreneurs that built great things, but you learn those things as you're building it.
Yeah. Well, I love to walk through the entrepreneurs' stories of when they come on, how they got started, and maybe some of the things in the beginning years, and then get to today's day and age. So one of the things, thinking about you and reading through your story, is, okay, you started this business in 1999. You were still a pretty young guy, and then you were doing what exactly back then? What was a product or service? Because I'm thinking, how could a young guy help some of these really old guys back in the 90s to run their business?
Yeah, it's funny. It's nice to have a little gray hair, because it helped. I mean, as I started out, we ran into that a little bit, quite honestly. And the other issue was, honestly, for me, that my biggest challenge starting was thinking that I had all these great relationships in the business world and all that, but there's much harder to convert a good relationship into a paying customer than I thought it would be. So people are all willing to cheer you on. Hey, that sounds great, Lee. You got to go out on your own. You'll do terrific, that kind of thing. And then you say, well, it's going to cost this much if you want me. It was different, right? And the other thing was, I was Julie's a brilliant she's the marketing brains behind our business. But I wasn't as good enough of a salesperson to just say, we'll help solve your problems. And so I would say we were not very clear on our value proposition, like exactly what we did. Mm-hmm. And then once I realized we weren't very good at it, I was like, okay, I've got to almost productize things. So I just went and I created a one-pager for 5 different services we could offer. One was about culture, one was about selection, a variety of things. And I said, no, here's what we do, here's our approach, here's the benefit you get, that kind of thing. Real simple, barely less than a page. I mean, well less than a page is what I meant to say, really short. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting. I put it on our site, and we would start getting calls going, hey, Lee, we like that 5-point checkup thing. We like that all-star employer thing, that service you offer. So I realized, like, oh, people like to buy defined things, right? Not just kind of like, oh, we'll help you solve your problems. And, you know, as you have a good relationship with them over time and you become a trusted advisor, just like you guys are, right? Mm-hmm. I'll give any problem to you guys. You help me figure it out, right? But if you don't know me, it's like, I know, what is it that you do? So that was a big learning for us to kind of, even on the services business, we needed to kind of productize things so people kind of knew a little more concretely what we could do for them. And by the way, full disclosure, I hadn't done any of those things I created products on, right? I was like, here's what we would do. But the lesson to me also was that people are buying confidence. Buying confidence in what you do. So people in the services, particularly in the services world, I tell them, like, you can't just say, oh, be so flexible, like, oh, we'll just do whatever you want. Like, you have to have a defined way that you do business, because it's not because you want to be like so rigid about it, but it's, people want that confidence. Like, okay, they've done this before. They know it works. They know it doesn't work. Well, now 26 years later, we really do know it works and doesn't work. And we've done many of these things many times. But even to start, you have to have some kind of a point of view or an approach or a methodology that gives people a sense of, like, okay, these guys have done this, and I'm willing to take a bet on them.
And that's really all you did, was take the methodology, the approach, the things that you knew worked, but you just put it in a product format.
Right.
And then it just made sense to all these customers all of a sudden.
Right. Yeah. And so I was like, oh, that was easy. And then easier than it was just saying, oh, we'll help you solve your problems, or we'll help you solve your organizational issues. The other thing that we did was that, since I wasn't great at selling, and I helped reframe that in terms of just serving, because we really viewed ourselves as a ministry. It was like a personal calling for Julie and I. Mm-hmm. So how do we just serve people well? And then the other thing, so we would just talk to people. We would just try to help them out, regardless of what their challenges were, personal and professional, didn't matter. But Julie created a pull marketing strategy, which really served us well, in that instead of just pushing ourselves out, we would pull people into us and just host these like CEO events in Dallas a few times a year at the Park City Club, invite 20, 30 people. At the beginning, they were mostly our friends filling seats, honestly, right? But over time, we created a reputation so we could pull in these senior level executives, no selling involved. They would meet each other. Many of them were friends already, or they knew each other through us. And we would just present a current challenge. Here's what we're doing to help people execute better. Here's what we're doing better to help them engage their workforce better, whatever it might be. And we'd give them some free tools, or once we started publishing books, we'd give them a free book, and they're off and running. Literally no sales, just relationship development and credibility development. And so at the beginning, we would try to, determine what's the ROI for each of these events we were having. Was it making sense for us? Then after a while, it became so evident, like it just was a nice snowball effect. And, the whole thing, people have to know you, like you, trust you in sales, right? Mm-hmm. So it was just a way to develop trust and credibility with them. And we found that as we did this, and we were adding value for people personally and professionally, there were two main benefits. Is that one was, when they had a need, it wasn't a competitive situation, right? And so as well as I do, if people come to you and they're not looking at other accounting firms and it's not competitive, they're also, the other thing that comes with that is they're not as price sensitive, mm-hmm. right? And so those are two really nice benefits. So we've continued to do that for 3 times a year for the past 26 years. So it's fun for us. Julie and I love to host and entertain. Mm-hmm. So it was actually nice to just kind of like, it's like having a party for people that come in, have a nice lunch, we have fun. It's pretty light. And over now, like, so many of the people know each other, and they've either met there or they've been to many of them. And so it's a great way for us. And we could also, like, we have a new book coming out. We could try out new content with them, and so it's a safe audience for us and just to share stuff. But most of it's just trying to add value and helping them. So if we're serving them well, we know good things happen.
Yeah. So did you charge for those at all, or was that a completely free thing? Just come lunch on us?
Never. Always added value. And we've debated that. Like, should we charge that? I was like, man, we want to be perceived as a premium player in the marketplace. I don't want to be charging people, it's $25 to have lunch. It just didn't make sense for us. Just like a lot of our content. we give it away free. And we've considered many years to say, should we start charging for our newsletter? We have tens of thousands of people that read it, and we've got a nice base. But I was like, you know what? It's just part of what we do. It's really who we are. We're just trying to help people out. I didn't really want to create any barriers there. Not that there are many people that do charge for it, and they, on Substack or whatever, and it's a great business model. Nothing against that. For us and the kind of positioning we wanted in the marketplace to be kind of a premier player, it just didn't make sense for us for the kind of business we're in.
Yeah. So. Well, I always, and I'm sure you've heard this too, in the sales side of things, I've always heard, it's never price. Price is never the issue. Yeah. It's always value.
Yes.
And it's always, people will obviously set a price in their head based off the value that they feel like
right.
they're getting.
Right.
And I completely agree with kind of what you said. The real clients that you want are the people that are not as price sensitive, yeah. because then it makes you feel better because you, as the servicer,
right.
feel like you're providing the value that they really need. Right. But then on the flip side of that, they have no problem paying it because they do feel like they're getting the value they're paying.
Exactly. So we're all, in fact, we don't bill anything on an hourly or a daily rate at all. We just try to scope it out with the client. Here's what we'll do for you. Here's the impact we think it'll have. Do you agree with that? Whether it's savings or added growth or opportunities for the business. And then we just align it on a fixed price. And that way, we always say we try to stay out of like kind of the lawyer mode of like billing by the hour. So it's like, if it goes more than that, we take the risk. If it doesn't, it's fine. So, and it's worked out well for us. We feel like we're getting good value for the service we're providing in terms of the monetary kind of reimbursement for that, and they're getting great value. So, yeah. If both people feel like they're winning, I mean, that's where you want to be.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even on the accounting side with what we do, that's something that we're trying to gear towards. And it is so hard to flip from that bill by the hour or the quarter hour because it's been like ingrained in accountants for such a long period of time. Yeah. But we are trying to shift more towards that. Just this is what we're offering you. This is the price on it. And then if it takes us twice as long as we think it's going to take us, then that's what it takes to get what the client needs, or sometimes it's faster. But the bottom line is they know that the value's good with what they're agreed to pay for, and we know that we're providing good value and making some money in the meantime. So
that concept of value-based pricing was introduced to me by a guy named Alan Weiss, who wrote a book years ago, a mega bestseller called The Million Dollar Consultant. And he was just like, you're never going to win pricing on your time. So he's always like, take the time to establish it up front with the value is of the client, and that's it. And so it's hard to do up front, but particularly in a kind of a time and materials business when you're, consulting. But we made that shift early on, and it's hopefully served us and served our clients well.
Yeah. So I was going to ask that. How long during the business cycle did you guys actually start the value model versus?
Well, I guess. Honestly, I shouldn't say we shifted to it because we learned it very early on. It was kind of toward the very beginning. It was just that we got better at it, and we worked with our patients, our clients more, and some of them were just. And it's really about helping their mindset because they're used to dealing with people that charge like, what's your hourly rate? Like, I don't care if it's like, what does that break down into? Like, I was like, well, it's not about the time we put in. Even our proposals are not focused on all of our tasks. They're focused on all your output. Here's what you're going to get. You don't need to worry about what we're going to do, right? We're just going to take care of that. And so we try to focus them on that. And again, we're not trying to rip anybody off. We're just trying to focus on the value. And if they can see great value in it, then there's upside for us too. So it was actually pretty early on. I was introduced to that book, and it was really made a difference for us. So, but we know a lot of people. We've talked to hundreds and hundreds of other consultants over the years, trying to help them. And the longer you're entrenched in that time and materials kind of mindset, the harder it is to make that shift, because it's not like a tough thing. It's not this big change you have to make. It's really up here. How do you start shifting away from your inputs to the outputs for the client? How do you start shifting away from your time to the value for their impact? So that's really the shift.
Yeah. So, and then you've mentioned this a couple of times. So you have a few books that you've written yourself, which helps you through your business right now.
Yeah.
When was the first book that you wrote? Around that time?
When you're in the services business, kind of you're getting some thought leadership out there, and some intellectual capital is important. So I would write articles and stuff, and just to kind of show our point of view and that type of thing. And I wrote one on sticking to it. It was this adherence equation we had of your focus times your competence times your passion equals your ability to stick with your plan. So think of it as the what, the how, and the why equals your ability to execute. So I just wrote an article on that. And a buddy of mine, Tim, said, "Hey, Lee, you ought to turn that into a book." And I was like, "Tim, do you realize that's like 1,000 words? That's about all I got, bud." Like, I didn't see myself as an author or writer at all. I was like, that's all I got. So it just happened. I was at a client a few weeks later, and I saw these little kind of thin, kind of rapid read books. A guy named David Cottrell was writing and done very well with them. So I picked one up and I called him, and we went to Humperdinck's off I-35, and I learned about his model, and he literally wrote on a cocktail napkin, "Okay, here's the deal. Let's turn it into a book." And 90 days later, I had our first book out, and it was called Sticking to It, The Art of Adherence. Little thin, rapid read book. We tell people it comes with one guarantee. You put it on your nightstand, in an hour, you're either done or you're asleep, right? But it did well for us, and we did a direct mail sampling method, which is the way we marketed, which means we would print 50,000 copies of them. To put this in perspective, McGraw-Hill and the big publishers, if you sell 10,000 copies or more, they're like thinking that's like a bestseller. So we're giving 40,000 copies away, and we're keeping 10,000 back just to fulfill. So what we did, we would ship those out just like in direct mail. We'd put a little wrapper around it, and our targeted list was people that would pay money to read and learn. So we didn't care so much about the Fortune 1000. It was that if you've subscribed to CEO magazine, or if you went to a particular training program recently, we'd capture that data, get your the mailing list, and send it to those people, because that psychographic was more important than the demographic. There was a pattern that people were willing to pay money to read and learn. So we'd send 40,000 of those out, and we'd sell the remaining 10,000, and we'd ship another one. So just as an example, that first book sold well over 100,000 copies, right? It's just little nothing, right? So then McGraw-Hill gets it and says, "Hey, we like that book, but we feel like you've sold to the entire universe already." I'm thinking, really? There's only 100,000 people? But so we turned it into a bigger book, and then through McGraw-Hill, but we would keep the rights of the original one. So we did that 3 times with different books we would write. They did well. McGraw-Hill said, turn it into a bigger one. So all in all, we have 16 books out. We're working on our 17th book. But those books, we didn't lead with the book. The book was an outgrowth of our consulting. So we would solve a problem around execution or engagement or culture or coaching. And because we view our business as a ministry, we're like, well, how can other people get the benefit of this model that we put in place? And we're very like how to cut through the clutter, like real simple stuff. And so we'd say, well, let's just convert our work into a book, and then kind of that's a way to get it out there. We've been very fortunate. All our books have made money, but it wasn't really the reason why we did that. And so in addition to just the books generating revenue, obviously we start getting calls. Can you do a keynote speech for us? And can you do some consulting or some coaching for us? So it's, we could do these books so inexpensively. It was almost like as cheap as our business card. So it was, if your business card itself could make money, which is what ours was doing, and then it was spinning off more revenue, it was a pretty good deal for the business.
Yeah. Well, I heard and it sounds like you've had this experience. I heard a podcast guest, I think it was this week or last week, talk about when they go into a business who's a service-based business, who's a consultant, who basically they're selling themselves.
Yeah.
The first thing they tell them to do is to write a book and then to give out 1,000 copies.
Yep.
Because that's really how you get clients. And it sounds like that's exactly what happened to you to a certain extent, at least.
Well, one of my mentors was Ken Blanchard, one of the great leadership authors in history and coaches. And he would say, he goes, listen, you guys figured something out. He goes, the hardest thing to do is get a book in somebody's hand, right? And so just if you could develop them, produce them cheaply and get them in their hands, that's the way to do it. Unfortunately, most people, when they write their first book, they kind of hold it very close to their chest, and I tell them, I was like, listen, who cares? You're giving away a book that cost you a few bucks to do. So you're going to make 20 bucks at it? Like, you're not going to make a living out of that, right? It's, you got to sell huge volumes of them, but it's not the 1 or the 1,000 or the 10,000 that you sell. It's what that leads to. So you really want to get them out there. So yeah, I would align with that advice. We took that advice to heart. We not only give 1,000, we would give 40,000 out free. We'd ship them out, right? So, and then another 40,000. So, in today's day and age, that model's changed because privacy and people not really working in the office. It's hard to get like the mailing address. And so people in magazines don't want to sell their mailing list. So it's been more difficult for us. So we really have to go more toward a social media oriented selling. So, using our newsletter and all the platforms to kind of make people aware of the book and that kind of thing. We still have our own proprietary mailing list. We'll send books out to those folks, but it's not 40,000.
Okay, gotcha. So is it really the social media side of things in today's day and age that's how you push books out to people? Is you just promote it that way?
Yeah, we try to provide value. So not even just pushing the book like here's a tool from the book. It might help you if you like more of this. There's the book if you're interested. I'm just not great at selling. It's just really just trying to add value. So yeah, it is social media channels. We do a fair amount of speaking through our these meetings I told you we host a few times a year. We speak at a lot of conferences, and so that's a way for us to get exposure. And certainly, we still have a pretty substantial proprietary mailing list of our clients and stuff. So they'll all get exposure to it and say, "Oh, I like your latest book. You come out here and talk to us about this, or train us on this, or whatever." So
yeah. Well, I feel like a couple times, Lee, you've kind of downplayed the business side of things, and I feel like I relate to that so much because as a business person, I think a lot like you, where I'm like, how can I provide more value, more value, more value? And I'm always thinking of ways where how can I put something in somebody's hands or somebody's mind or somebody's ears for free? And it provides me this like warm feeling to myself where it's like, it's not even the dollars in my pocket. It's the feeling that I get from feeling like, oh man, at least I gave that one person something that hopefully will help them in their lives.
Right. Yeah. I mean, again, we view it, we're here to serve. So if we could help somebody out, 90% of the time, there's no remuneration for it. And that's fine. We feel very fortunate that we've, by the grace of God, we have a business where the clients that we have, we do well enough with them that we can spend a fair amount of our time just helping people out. And so, and even with the clients that we're getting paid for like, how do we just add extra value? How do we delight and surprise them? How do we help them out with something that wasn't even within scope or just something on a personal level? So that, to me, that's the most rewarding part. So,
yeah. Well, so you've written a few books, and then you've got one that you brought with you that you've published, and then you mentioned maybe you're writing another one. So tell us about those last couple books.
Yeah, the last book we did just a couple years ago is called Healthy Leadership, and it was really just how to thrive in today's changing world of work. So it's really based on a few principles and a few practices. So it's really about how, as a leader in today's world, you have to kind of shift your mindset and then your practices, So it's really about your mindset and your skill set. So in the mindset, we have three things like your love, positivity, and growth. And so when we were testing this model out, people would go like, even the people in HR going, love in the workplace. Does that feel right, Lee? Are you sure about that? And I'm thinking, dudes, really? But it's only the most spoken about, written about, sung about topic in the world. But really, we just define love as doing what's in the best interest of your team, right? That's really what it is. So it's not about you. Right? We always say, leadership is never about the leader, but it starts with the leader. So it was love, and then positivity is not about just keeping a smiling face. Julie's one of 1,300 people certified in the world in positive psychology from the Flourishing Institute. So she really understands how the brain works. For years, psychology was really built around how do we understand dysfunction, right? So how do we get people to neutral? And in 1999, the president of the APA, American Psychological Association, Martin Seligman, said, hey, we've got loads of books on this stuff, like down below the line. How do we develop some research to get people above the line to thriving, right? So above neutral to thriving. So the whole field of positive psychology was born then. So Julie's one of the experts in that. And so we just used the understanding of the brain and how our natural biases work to make sure people can manage that effectively so that they could bring the right mindset into a relationship. And then so the other was growth. So it's love, positivity, and growth are kind of the three mindsets you have to work toward. And then the practices were to clarify clarity in your expectations, in your mission, in your vision, your values, and then connection, which is really key, and then coaching. So those are kind of the three practices under that. So we've just used that to help people address just this changing workforce, right? People, they're not at work anymore. They're not in the office anymore or as much, and just shifting set of values with the new worker, and just how do you make sure you deal with that rather than kind of going, oh, you're getting frustrated. It's like, it really starts with you. I would say life's a game of inches, the 6 inches between your ears, right? So it's really getting your mindset right first. So that's really the essence of that book. Yeah.
Okay. And then the new one.
Yeah, the new one's really about trying to address this issue of kind of this whole disconnected world we live in. People struggle. And so if you look at I don't know if you've read the Surgeon General's report on loneliness, So like 1 out of 6 people are lonely, this whole loneliness epidemic. And so then you add on top of that, this frictionless world that we live in. So I could get up in the morning, I could just turn on my computer, I could have everything delivered to me. I have, virtual medicine, I have virtual everything. So no friction, which also means no human contact, right? So we're creating this world where people just don't really know how to connect, whether it's professionally, personally. So we're trying to just boil down a very simple model to help people create healthy human connections with people and just boil it down. And that on top of the pandemic and people being home, a lot of people are just anxious about doing that. And I feel like regardless of how much AI is in the world, the technology and all that, there's no substitute for connecting with people one-on-one. And so we're just trying to encourage people, and we're not anti-technology or anything like that, but the more technology plays a central role in our life, the human connection is starting to get squeezed out. And so it's just like a muscle, like we don't practice that. And so we're just trying to encourage people to say, like, the richness of a real human relationship and connection is very powerful, has many psychological, emotional, and physical benefits. In fact, I think it's almost 100-year, 80-plus-year longitudinal study that's showing that, like, the number one predictor of people's longevity is the quality of their relationships. It has nothing to do with what they eat, their exercise, anything like that. It's the quality of their relationships. So we just think that's a really important aspect for the world of work and your life in general. So that's kind of what the next one's about.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. I think the more, or the older I get, I guess, rather, I used to really enjoy business, and I still enjoy business. Yeah. But the older I get, I think the more I enjoy your field with psychology and understanding people and how they work and, like, how to help them. And one thing that I heard recently in terms of investing is it was an investing expert, and he said he feels like there's two ends of the spectrum with good investments. One of those being AI, which I think is pretty obvious and evident to everybody because AI is such a big thing. There's a lot of money to be made there. But then he said the flip side of that, and another investment that you could consider, is kind of the opposite, which is, like, there's people that are creating these, like, outdoor spaces where there's no technology at all. Yeah. There's only people there, and it's intended to be the opposite of AI. Yep. And I think it all goes back to exactly what you're saying. You just people have naturally a desire to want to have human interaction. That's right. And if you get out of that habit, I'm sure, like you're saying, it's scary to get back into that world, but you just need it. Yep. And every one of us need it. Yep. And I think it'll be interesting to see those two very different things happening over probably the next 10 years. Yeah,
it'll be fun to kind of watch how they merge or don't, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, we're wired to connect. We kind of long to belong, and I believe we're better together. And it's not just my belief. There's plenty of research. One interesting study on this is that they showed people individually an incline, right? And they had to estimate the pitch of that incline, right? Individually. Then they were in the room together with a friend, and they had to estimate that incline, same incline. Well, when you were together with a friend, you estimated it as 10 to 20% lower than it was. So even just like when you're with someone, you feel like that mountain, we could do that together, right? We can get that. But when you're alone, things seem a little more insurmountable, a little steeper, right? Yeah. So just one small thing about how, like, when we're together, we can support each other, and it just makes life a little easier.
Yeah, well, I did that to myself over the weekend because one of my friends is training for an Ironman.
Oh, wow, impressive.
Yeah. And he was like, hey, I need to run a half marathon. Do you want to come do it with me over the weekend? And we had just gotten back from vacation, so I was not well rested. But I was like, well, if he's with me, I could probably do it. And then he texted me, like, the morning of. He was like, hey, by the way, it's a little further, so we're just going to do 15 miles. But it was that same thing. In my brain, I was like, well, he'll be there. Yeah. So if he's there, then I can push myself to just stay with him.
Sure, yeah. And you pulled it off?
We pulled it off. I had to walk the last couple miles.
That's all right. Hey, you finished. Well done.
Yeah. So, but it's a lot of truth to what you're saying. Yeah. It's like, if you have somebody there with you, then, I mean, at a minimum, at least you can enjoy doing it together.
For sure.
Even if it's challenging, and even if you have to go a little slower than you thought, doing it together.
Yeah. And that's a shared experience, which is a key aspect of kind of developing these connections that we're talking about in the new book, like creating shared memories and experiences together. And that's one that's going to stick with you for a while, right?
Yeah, it definitely will.
That's awesome.
So another thing, you do a lot of executive coaching. And one of the things that I'm sure you talk a lot to these coaches about, which I'm sure is not important at all in the workplace, and you've kind of hinted at this, is culture. So
yeah, right. Yeah.
Is culture important in the business world at all, Lee?
Yeah, you know, it's we've been culture consultants for years. We do a lot of work around that. And I'm just really happy that like now it's like finally like at the forefront. Most executives realize like how critical it is. And it's harder than it's ever been too, because we have people coming into the office different days and stuff, and it's just a little tougher, but it really is the defining thing that people look for when they're coming into the business. There's been plenty of research over the years from Harvard, from Stanford, that point to the business benefits of having a strong culture. You know that the best companies to work for have half the turnover rate and twice the amount of applications per job opening, right? Who out there? Raise your hand if you'd like half the turnover rate, right? You know, of course, right? So lots of financial benefits to having a good, strong culture. But we're also big on we're very pragmatic in our approach. It's like, it's not culture for just culture's sake. It's like, it's culture so that we can achieve more as a team. So people could feel good about each other, so they could grow together, right? So it's not just like, put ping pong tables and foosball in the break room. It's like, okay, is there intention behind everything you're doing? And sometimes people just kind of jump on the bandwagon about doing all kind of cultural things because they're trying to check stuff off. We try to just help them be intentional about what's your business objective, and then what kind of culture is going to support that. And so, but absolutely, it's critical. People are very discerning about it these days. Even people like younger in their career. Like when I was younger, it was like you just went to work for somebody. Like who was I to be picky about where? But nowadays, even people younger in their career, I'm only going to work for a place that has a really positive culture. They support growth and they support all the good stuff, wellness. And so, if you're not doing those kind of things, you're just left behind.
Yeah.
And so just from a selection standpoint and getting the best of the best, everyone wants the best of the best. So we it's first and foremost. Interesting, just study on this Mercer did years ago of I forget how many, but the most active, 50 or 100, the most active companies in mergers and acquisitions over several years. They asked them, what are the things that are most important to you as you enter an acquisition, right? And they would say, is it financially accretive? Is it strategically aligned? All this stuff, right? Cultural alignment didn't even make the top 10, right? They went back to the same CEOs after their latest acquisition and just said, what's the most important thing after the fact? There wasn't even a close second. It was cultural fit, right?
Wow.
They realized that will just take them to their knees if it's not a good cultural fit. And so we've worked with a lot of clients over the years that were growing quickly, and they had a lot of these acquisitions. So one of them in particular, energy company, they acquired a new plant. They went down, they had all their FAQs, all the questions they might have. They're all ready. They're all buttoned up to answer anything. They get in there, okay, they finished their big presentation, the dog and pony show. Okay, any questions? Only one question, and everyone had the same question. Are we still going to get the turkeys for Thanksgiving this year? Right? That was important to them. But what happened was they didn't take the time to really understand the culture, what was important to them. And they were like, we're not, they hesitated. We're not, don't hesitate on that. Give them the turkeys, right? That's what's the big deal, right? And so, but really understanding what's important to people and the cultural norms as organizations come together, really critical. And so I think the savvier companies that are in acquisition mode understand that, but still, most times it's run by PE firms or investment bankers, and it's very much numbers. Listen, the numbers got to make sense. I'm not debating that at all, but I think the culture kind of needs to be on a similar playing field because it'll take you to your knees pretty quickly.
Yeah, I heard somebody say once that if a company has a great business plan, is extremely good at what they do, but they have a terrible culture, that business would probably fail. But if they have a average business plan, an average way to do business, but they have a great culture, that business is extremely likely to succeed because the culture is so good.
Right. Well, the old slogan, culture eats strategy 24/7.
Yep.
Right. And so you think about just locally, Southwest Airlines for years, right? If you were to start up an airline back in the day and say, we're going to start up an airline, but it's only going to be able to fly to the contiguous states to Texas nonstop. And then it's going to have to connect if it goes after that. Of course, they were restricted by the Wright Amendment. That's why they had to do that. But if you were to think about that, that's a horrible strategy for an airline, right? But they had an amazing culture. Colleen Barrett, great friend, and Herb Kelleher, they just had this amazing culture, and they knew how to execute through that culture. And it only yielded 44 years or some odd of like record, of profitable, earnings. But perfect example of that, right? And like, if you look at it from an industry standpoint, stupid strategy, right? But just execute the heck out of it day in and day out, and they pull it off. And so we'll tell our clients, most of our clients are very smart people in the room, right? So yes, you have to have a good strategy, but that's necessary but not sufficient. So we've got to figure out, like, how do we execute that strategy? We would say 90% of strategy is about execution, and 90% of execution is about your people. It's really about the culture. So it really ends up coming to like what kind of expectations and support and resources do your people have to make sure they can execute well. So even if it's a modest strategy, they're still going to execute the heck out of it.
Well, so like I mentioned earlier, you do a lot of executive business coaching, and maybe some of these questions will all go back to culture. But when you're working with a new executive, somebody that you're trying to teach, like they have things that they just want advice from you on, what are some of the top things that you help those executives with?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, remember the adherence equation I alluded to earlier, your focus times your competence times your passion. When you get to that executive level, there's a lot of stuff going on, right? And so focus is like the biggest challenge we find in most cases. Like, how do I take my limited time and where do I apportion it to? How do I allocate it? And there's lots of things coming in. So like, how do I create filters around things? And everything's important, but the question is the relative importance, where we say the most important decision you make in business and in life is to determine what's most important to you, right? So as a leader, if everything's important, that's just filtering down, your whole workforce is getting diffused. So like, they have to know, like, these are the things that are most important. So just giving them some tools and some techniques around focusing and figuring out, like, what meetings do I go to, what meetings do I don't go to, which initiatives do I take care of, which things do I delegate, which things do I keep to myself, right? How much do I spend focusing outward of the organization, how much inward? So that focused issue is just a challenge. It's a challenge for everybody, but when you get to a top of an organization, there's a lot of breadth and a lot of depth that you're responsible for. So I think that's like the number one challenge we end up seeing, is just kind of focus. Yeah. And so and the other thing is just sometimes just their mindset about themselves or about their people. The more we do this work over the years, the more I end up tying back to our original roots of psychology and really understanding how the brain works and how natural biases in our brain may or may not be serving us. And so kind of helping people kind of uncover some of those assumptions they might have about themselves or their work or their team, so that they can kind of break those patterns and create more of a positive mindset.
Gotcha. Well, Lee, let me put you on the spot then, because I love to have tangible examples when guests come on. So I'm a partner in the CPA firm that I have. Time is always of the essence, regardless of what I'm doing. Yeah. So my day consists of clients saying that they need things, staff saying that they need things. Yeah. I'm trying to figure out where to put my focus. What are the things that you would ask me that would help me to hone in on really what it is that's important in my job?
Sure. I think the first question would be, have you considered retirement? No, I'm just joking. I'm just joking.
Have you considered a different industry?
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. Your classic case, like, you've just got demands, different stakeholders kind of coming at you, and appropriately so. Coming at you, it sounds like bad, but like they have needs you're trying to meet, right? Mm-hmm. So real estate development's great about this. They always have this concept of what's the highest and best use of that land. So on a big intersection in a big city, they're not going to put like a 7-Eleven where they can put a big skyscraper, right? And I would say, as leaders, we need to take that same concept and say, what's the highest and best use of my time right now? So I would probably have you be asking yourself that, okay, all right, what's the highest and best use of my time for the business at this point? Because actually, you have a responsibility that's bigger than any one person's need. I'm not saying don't meet those needs, but like taking a broader view of that and saying, how am I best serving the organization? So we might step back and say, okay, I need to make sure I'm spending at least X amount of my time addressing clients. And if those client needs are more, well, then the question might be, okay, are there certain people I need to be delegating to or developing over time so that we can still be meeting those clients' needs, but I'm a partner in the firm and my people need me too. So I have to have a certain amount of time for them also, right? So it's really kind of stepping back big picture and just saying, how do I feel like now, but more importantly in the future, how do I prepare for that I need to start apportioning my time, and what kind of things do I need to start doing now to start having that, putting the right things in place, developing the right people, the right habits, the right systems in place so that I can give people uninterrupted time. They're not feeling like, oh, I'm checking it off. Oh, I've just talked with you, but I'm looking at my phone. I'm waiting for my next call type of thing, right? Really focused time. And so I'm talking to Troy right now. He's with me, right? He's not looking over my shoulder. He's not, whatever. So, so really thinking about what the needs are for the future and figuring out, okay, so to me, it's all about time and attention.
Yeah.
So if it boils down to that, that's the most limited things, right? We used to talk about time management, but really now it's almost like attention management, because sometimes people say, oh, Lee, I'm giving them my time, and I observe them, and they're not giving them their attention, right? They're checking off the time. So it's really, where can you give someone your full attention, a client, an employee, your fellow partners, whoever it might be, and how do you start apportioning that? So we always start with the biggest picture and say, what do you want your life to look like? Not just your business. So, because we could say, hey, let's put in 18, 20 hours a day and you can meet everybody's need. Isn't that great? Well, that's probably not the life you want, right?
Right.
So we always step back. If, people in busy points in their life, they might have kids running around, that type of thing. So what do you want your life to look like? Do you want to be like, so whenever we work with a client, we'll always have at least one or two personal goals in there too. So regardless of the impact they're trying to make on the business, one of them might say, an example is like, I want to be home for dinner at least 2-3 nights a week, right, with my kids and that type. Okay, so in order to do that, what do we have to put in place? So we try to have a vision for their life and then start, okay, then here's how much time we need, how much time you dedicate to the business, and then within that, how much time you want to dedicate. So once we understand the amount of time and attention for each of the constituents, then we start putting tools or approaches in place to gradually get you there. It might be, you know what, you're not delegating a whole lot. So, and maybe you might say, Lee, I don't feel comfortable delegating a whole lot right now. I don't have the team. All right, what do we need to do to start putting the right team in place, Troy, to make sure that that's in place? So it's not a very specific answer, but we always try to start with the biggest picture and then kind of apportion down from there. So, and so as an example, it's never like a quick solution either. I like people like, oh, what's like the one tool I could use? And it's like, we're working with smart people like you, like they know all the tools and stuff. So if they're struggling, it's something that's like deeper we need to kind of dig into. And we usually have like a hockey stick approach. In other words, we're digging in and figuring out the assumptions they're making or the habits they've had in place that maybe aren't bad, but maybe it's not going to serve them well in the future. And once we can uncover those, the shift in the mindset or a change in some habits, all of a sudden, then we kind of get some impact. But it might take a little while to get there.
I really like, even though you said it's not a very specific answer, I really like how you approached it. I just read a book recently by Dan Martell, and he talks about time. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure it's in that book that he mentions the way that he approaches it is exactly what you said. He says what is important in his life personally. Yeah. And then he breaks out all of the hours and the times that he needs for the things that are truly important to him. Yeah. And then he gets to like even sleep and then takes out everything. And he says, okay, this is how much time I have left. And that's what I can allocate to my business. Right. And it's kind of the opposite of how most business owners, I think.
That's right, yeah.
They're like, oh, well, I got to get all this stuff done for business. So I'll do all that. And then whatever I've got left, then I'll spend on my family or my spouse or my church or my school or whatever it is. And it's like you said, if you accomplish all these things with your business, even if you make millions of dollars a year, who cares? Yeah.
You don't know how many clients we spoke to that are highly successful in the workplace that have said, my family feels like they get my leftovers, their words, not mine. And so it's like, okay, well, how do we start shifting that? Right. So,
we have one of our guests on, and he talks about, finding your passion in life. And he said that if he believes that if you were truly passionate about something, then you would do it regardless of pay. And then he does say, assuming that your livelihood is taken care of, that if you were truly passionate about something, you would do it anyway because you enjoy doing it. And I think that that's all what it goes back to is we talk about you work to provide a living for the lifestyle that you want, but then somehow along the way, it just gets jumbled up to where it's like all of a sudden you're working for this lifestyle that you don't even really want in the first place. Because you're just trying to accumulate more and more and more. Yeah. And all of a sudden you have all this stuff, but then what if you lose your family, or what if you waste all those years of your kids growing up to 18 and then all of a sudden they're not in the house anymore? What does it even matter at that point?
In the U.S. economy, love being in the U.S. and our capitalist economy has served us very well. But like the mantra would be, we live to work. And I think that's gradually shifting toward what the European approach has been for years, is that we work to live, right? And I think the right balance is probably somewhere in the middle. We just still need to have a productive economy and businesses. But I think from our perspective, we could probably afford to shift a little bit to kind of figure, okay, how do I get some balance in my life? And we have so many more tools and technologies now that can kind of help us still be productive without necessarily have to put all the hours in. So, I think there's some balance there.
Yeah.
It's interesting to watch that shift.
I'll look forward to my wife listening to this podcast and looking at me and being like, "Are you listening to your own podcast? Can you please come down here and let's spend some time together instead of working?"
It's a real challenge. And the great news is most of our clients, like you, they love their work. So it's not like it's like drudgery, but they also love their wife and their life and their family too. So it's like, okay, how do I still find a reasonable balance?
Yeah. So on the topic of family, I always like to hear people talk about their family and how that relates to their business. Yeah. Have there ever been challenges being either a dad or a husband to where work is just really put you in a bad spot and you got to pick between the two and it's been tough?
When we built the business, we said we're building this business so that we could have the life that we want. So at the beginning, I would personally, I just never sacrifice anything for my family. So, I would do anything for them, but I wouldn't sacrifice, say, I got to do this at the office. So I would put the kids down to sleep when they were young, and I would go into the office at 10 or 11 at night, and I would come back at 6:30, shower up, and do it all over again. Now, I wouldn't do that I would do it maybe twice a week, 2-3 times a week. But that when you're starting a business, like that's what you got to do. But I wasn't about to miss a soccer game or a practice or them coming, dinner, that kind of thing. So I was just like, listen, I could always get my sleep back, but I want this time. So for me personally, it was never a big, and I think my kids would attest to that. It was never a conflict. They never felt like they got the short end of the stick or anything like that. But I went in with that mindset of going, I'm doing this business so that I could be the dad I want to be and be the husband I want to be and that type of thing. So now the challenge was as Julie got more and more involved, we've co-founded the business, but as the kids were growing up, she was mostly taking care of them. I was doing then as they got older, she was getting more engaged in the business, and we had to kind of define roles, right? Mm-hmm. And so that was always a challenge. So people were like, you've worked with your wife for that long? I was like, yeah, we have. It's not always easy, right? And so we had to figure out, okay, what are your gifts? What are my gifts? What do we focus on? And just even different styles. Julie's got an idea a minute, and I'm the execution guy. So like she'd throw out an idea, and I'd immediately go, well, but if we did this, these are all the barriers. And she's like, dude, like, let me just get the idea out, right? Like, and so I had to learn, okay, let's let her get the idea out, then we could talk through it. Like, so just understanding our different styles at work and stuff. And now, as we work with clients, we have our own coaching clients and stuff, but like our consulting, our speaking, our training, a lot of it we do together. We're absolutely better together. She has a totally different approach and style than me, but like we're clearly better together. And like certainly like if we're with a client, she could feel my knee bouncing underneath the table because I'm like, I'm wanting to get to the next thing. And she's like, and I could tell her, she's saying like, just calm and connect. Like just connect with the human being first. Don't look at him as a client, right? So she's just way better at that. So we've found over the years how to kind of leverage each other's strengths around that, but that just takes time. It's not always simple and easy. But
yeah. Well then, kind of like you inferred there, sometimes it's challenging. Sometimes it's amazing to work with your spouse.
Yeah.
Have there ever been any challenges working together over the last 26 years?
Never. Not at all. Yeah, of course. Absolutely.
I thought you were serious for a second.
No.
Next question.
No. Absolutely. And it stems from mostly role lack of clarity, which we had to work on for a while, and style difference. And so, so the role clarity was established, and that was fine. The style difference still, like you have to kind of deal with that sometimes. Like, and it's usually on my side, right? I have a problem, right? So it's like, okay, I'm thinking like, okay, she has this great idea, but I'm like, okay, here I'm thinking way ahead, and I'm like, okay, just calm down on that, and then so she could feel shut down on something, and I appropriately, right? So still kind of have to always work through some of that stuff. But 99% of the time, it's been a blessing to us, and hopefully we can bless other people, and that's why we're doing it. Yeah.
Have you ever had to put boundaries between like, all right, we'd stop working here so that we can actually enjoy being husband wife here?
Yeah. we haven't done that formally because our work is so much of, it's just like who we are and we love it so much. But by the same token, like if you talk to our friends and our kids, most importantly, they would never say like mom and dad are workaholics, nothing like that. When we're with them, we're with them. But if we enjoy talking about things, our business, some of it's about the business, the way we grow the business, the way we market it. But some of it, a lot of it's just about people, like how do we help people and the challenges we have. And we just love doing that. So we have a very nice balance in our lives. We really get to enjoy lots of fun things, thank God. So we don't find that to be an issue. And I think, and I would just say this to all the entrepreneurs out there, the beauty of being an entrepreneur is having that flexibility. So I know people will say, at 6 o'clock, you got to turn it off. I was like, if it's your business, it's never off. It's just never off. So, it's okay. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but it's like, enjoy that beauty, that fluidness of taking the time over dinner to talk about something, or in the middle of the day, kicking off and going to your kid's soccer game or whatever you want to do. But enjoy that fluidness of it. I think sometimes people want to create the rigidity, but part of being on your own is having that fluidity. Now, what people don't see a lot of times with entrepreneurs that have been in the business like you for a while, and you've built this nice business with Annie, is that they see the fruits of the flexibility maybe sometimes on the end. But it's like, I told you, like for a long time, I was like putting in all-nighters, like to kind of get where we are. So yeah, there's a hustle up front, but I think there's also this beautiful, just kind of natural blending. And if you could figure out if the thing that you're doing is something you really love to do and you feel really passionate about it. I mean, I've told my kids, like, I've never felt like I worked a day in my life, like at least since I started my business. So that's where you want, to me, like that's the golden nugget. If you could be there, if it doesn't feel like work, then it's like, okay, that's a real blessing to me if you can get to that. And we try to help people get to that point of that intersection of something they're really passionate about and then something they're naturally gifted at, right? So it's, you gotta, I could be passionate about dancing. I'm not a gifted dancer, right? That's not my intersection, right? So you gotta find that intersection, your natural gifts and what you're passionate about. If you could find that and build a business around that, it's not going to feel like work, and you feel like you're making a difference in people's lives. There's the golden nugget right there.
Yeah. I think this ties in with that. You have this on your website. It's a Zig Ziglar quote. It says, you could have everything in life you want if you would just help other people get what they want.
Yeah.
Why do you like that quote?
I love that. Zig's been a mentor of mine. His son, Tom's a great guy too, just a real wise man. I love that quote because it's really about service, and I just view myself as a servant. So I feel like if you could help enough other people get what they want, it's going to fill up your heart. Even if you don't, it doesn't mean you're going to get the material benefits, but I believe in serving others, and if you sow enough seeds, you're going to reap what you need to reap. And so we believe that if you just sow and help people out, that good things are going to come back to you. So. And people call it the law of the harvest. You can call it whatever you want, but some people call it karma. It's my belief. I'm a Christian, so I just believe that that's kind of God's commandment for us, that we can go out there and serve, and I trust Him to kind of take care of our needs from there.
Yeah, well, you said Zig's been a mentor of yours. Do you think it's important for people to find mentors?
Yeah, I believe so. And I also think the thing about a mentor is that you could have mentors for seasons in your life, Troy. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I have this mentor, right? So at some point in your life, you might have a mentor, and it could be a few months, a few years. That's fine. Then there might be somebody else, and that's okay. So I just say that to relieve the pressure of people of thinking like, I have to find the right mentor, right? So I do think it's important to find someone that's kind of been there, done that you have a relationship with, that is willing to help you. The other thing is too, I think it's built on a relationship. Sometimes people say, oh, could you just be my mentor? I was like, well, if you don't really know the person, like I think it's important to just get to know somebody for a while and work with them a little bit, and then see if it kind of, I think the best mentoring relationships, there's really not a defined moment. Like I didn't say, oh, it's not like, can we start dating now? Right? It's not like that, right? So it just kind of evolves into a mentoring relationship. It's not like a formal ask. And so I think that's really important in people's lives. And I've David Cottrell, the gentleman I spoke with, ended up being a business partner, was really a mentor of mine, and kind of on the authoring side of things and stuff. So I think it's absolutely critical.
Yeah, it's.
So who's your mentor, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I mean, I think Annie has really done a lot of mentoring for me.
Fabulous, yeah.
Specifically in my business career.
Yeah.
I like the way that she approaches clients. I like the way that she thinks about business.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the reason that I relate to kind of a lot of what you've said. It's because I've sat in so many meetings or sat in the office next to Annie and seen her be bothered if she feels that she can't provide the value and she can't help that person and she can't provide the service, or if it's something where, you know, a client that I could see was completely in the wrong, that we had provided a good service, but because she cares about that person so much, it just bothers her. And I think that just seeing her has really developed a sense of the curiosity partially to your field with trying to understand, I care about these people so much and want to see them succeed. Why does that affect me so much? But I think it's all been kind of a direct correlation between having that mentor in Annie and learning from her all these years. So,
you know, research over the years has shown like one of the most distinguishing features of the most effective leaders is really their caring, to the extent to which they actually just care and have a vested interest in the other person's success, whether it's an employee or a client. So it really gets to the heart of the matter you're talking about.
Well, let me flip the question back on you then. Tell me about one of your mentors and maybe.
I've had several over the course of my career, but most recently in this business, actually some of my clients have become mentors in a way. They've really, I learned from them and they've served me well. An old friend and a great client for a long time, Barry Davis, who founded Crosstex Energy Service for years, he may not realize it, but he's been a mentor to me. And the gentleman I mentioned before named David Cottrell, a best-selling author, really kind of helped me kind of expand into that field and just learn about that. And this is what a mentor does for you as an example. It was the 5th book I was writing under his label. He had a mid-sized publishing firm. And I sent it to him. I thought I was done. David, why don't you put your eyes on it before we start kind of go to press, that kind of thing. And he sends it back with just a few words. And he just says, Lee, is this your best work? And I was like, oh, it just got me. I was like, oh. And it wasn't, right? And he knew, and it was true. But that's the kind of thing like a mentor could do for you. And so I was like, okay, let's go back to square one, right? And so, but it was absolutely the right thing to do. We got a better product out. But I would say a mentor is willing to, he tells you what you really need to hear, but he tells it to you to build you up, not to break you down. So it might be a tough delivery or a tough message, but it's to make you better. And that's what people like David and Barry have done for me over the course of my life.
Well, I would imagine that the reason that you could receive that so well is because he had probably spent a lot of time really investing in you and encouraging you.
Trust built up.
Yeah, and trust built up. And I think that that's something that a lot of people maybe miss, is it's easy to be the critical guy, but being critical of your employees or your mentees or clients, whatever it is, like that doesn't help if you don't have that relationship built already.
Sure.
And I think that people sometimes just skip past the relationship building and the investing side.
Right.
And I think that that's more important than being correct.
And that's why the best mentors are just built. Really, it's almost informally over time. You have this kind of relationship that gets built up. You don't need to say like, be my mentor. They just kind of evolve into that, you know.
Do you have mentees, I guess, that you are mentoring right now?
Yeah, and there are a lot of them that people I'll meet with on a periodic basis, and some for a short period of time just to get them running. They're trying to shift careers or do something different or start a business, and I'll help them out. And then some people it's been longer term over time, but that's probably the majority of the time I spend in our business is doing that, and I love that. And that's just kind of on an informal basis.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain level, I guess that's kind of what you do in general. Is be a mentor to people to a certain extent with the coaching and just trying to invest in people.
And so I do. You know, some of those are paid engagements. Most of them are not, which is fine. I mean, most of them are just like informal people. Hey, Lee, we've heard that you could help with this or that, and I love just being able to help people out that way. You know, and listen, and I had plenty of people help me along the way that have helped me short circuit things. And, you know, there's no one else in the world I could have walked into a Humperdinck's with and 90 days later have my first book out. Like David Cottrell helped me do that. So there are a lot of people like that in my life. And I believe we were just here to, you know, we get to a point a little later in our careers, like we have a little more experience, maybe hopefully a little more wisdom that we could share with people. I just feel like it's kind of sitting on a mountain of gold and feeling poor if we're not sharing that.
Yeah. Well, you've talked a lot about things that you're passionate about, things that you love. And I think to a certain level, you've been vulnerable with the audience. And I'd love to hear maybe from your perspective, the flip side of that. Is there anything in your life, whether it's business or personal, that you're scared of that really is just something that you're aware of, that you recognize there, but that you just makes you nervous, I guess?
Yeah, I think just as a father, like not being able to provide for your family, like that's like always like number one thing on your mind, right? So, and you have your own business, by the grace of God, it's been great, but like you never know, like from one year to the next, you could have, we've had great years, we've had slower years, and so to me, like that's the number one thing, and that's why like having 3 grown kids that are all thriving on their own now is like kind of like, okay, we got past that, which was great. So, and so that's a big thing, and my wife Julie's great about like facing fears and going into things. She jumped out of an airplane with my son, and then I was morally obligated to do it with my daughter, even though I hate heights. So, if it's for my family, I'll do anything. But for me, I think it's funny. I said this a few years back. They say like for some of the best athletes, like the game just slows down for them. Like they could just see the field or the court, whatever. I felt like a few years ago, having done this long enough, I felt like the game really much slowed down for me in that I've just seen almost every possible problem or challenge or scenario that I could just say, okay, nothing's going to like throw me for a loop. So at least in the business perspective, I'm like going, yeah, and I'm also pretty good about saying, I don't think we could do that for you. Let me send you to somebody else. Like we try to stick to our knitting, right? So don't stretch out too much. But I felt like I was getting like pretty comfortable with things and stuff. But on the life side, non-business side, not too much scares me. Again, I think my faith has a lot to do with that. I'm not afraid of dying. I know where I'm going. I'm not afraid for my kids, and you always want the best for your family and your kids and stuff. But like whatever happens, I know God will be on our side, and we'll get through it. Doesn't mean it's easy, but I know that my faith like really just, I don't really live a life of fear, and I'm grateful for that because I know fear is a big driver and inhibiting factor for a lot of people. I just haven't felt that much over the course of my life. I'm fortunate about that.
Well, I think that in entrepreneurship, the scarcity of being able to provide is probably one of the number one things people would say makes them nervous about going into it. Do you think that fear made being able to provide much more fulfilling to be able to do that for your family?
Yeah. It's funny. Julie is the real entrepreneurial one in the family. Her dad's been a classic entrepreneur for years. I was like the steady Eddie guy. So like when I decided to go out on my own, I came home one day, I'm going to go out on my own. She's like, what? Who are you? Who's my husband? Right. So I don't know what got into me. It was another one of those Herman von Wagner moments. I don't know. But so I said, okay, just go for it. But it was always top of mind. And it was for a long time. It wasn't like we had 3 young kids. They all went to private school. It was important for us to send them to a Christian school. So none of that was cheap. And that was our choice. It's our responsibility. But like, it wasn't just like, for the first couple of years, it was a struggle. Like we had to make sure we were taking care of things for a while. And so I don't know that it's rewarding more than a relief, honestly. Like, okay, we got through that. Okay, good. We're able to pay those bills type of thing, And then after a while, you get a little cushion. It's all good. But so it was less rewarding than more relieving, I would say, for me personally.
Gotcha. So you've done a lot then over the years, and now you've gotten to a really good place, is kind of what you said. What are you working towards now? What's next for you?
Yeah, again, there's no mention of retirement in the Bible. And so God willing, as long as we're healthy enough and sharp enough, we'd like to just keep doing this, maybe at a different level. But we have a very nice life right now to be able to do things with our kids and travel and see our families. Most of our families not in the Dallas area, so we get to enjoy still time with them. And but we still want to keep pushing ourselves and do that for the benefit of our clients. We just love that. So we're not like winding down or anything like that. I believe this next book is really probably our most important book. Doesn't every author say that? So, but I believe just because it's such a human fundamental issue of people, the importance of being able to, like most of our books are around like business topics. This is for business, but it's also just at a very deep personal level of how do you really connect and make meaningful relationships with people? I just think that's really important. And I think if we don't equip people with some basic tools to do that, that this significant shift of technology and AI can easily just kind of create hermits out of all of us, right? This completely frictionless world. I don't have to deal with anybody. And so if we don't encourage people and equip them with some simple tools to start getting out there and then seeing the power of really connecting with people on a one-to-one level and the depth of those relationships and what they could offer you emotionally, psychologically, physically, and everything, I just think that's really important for the future. So we just, we're excited about that. We have our middle daughter's getting married next month, so that's
congrats.
Thank you. So another phase of life there. But we love the kind of people that we work with. We sponsor the local chapter Young Presidents Organization, so we get to see like new leaders coming up and working with them at that busy time in their life. So we just love being able to kind of pour back into other folks, informally or formally, whether it's part of our business or just our life. It's really one and the same for us. It's just who we are. So,
yeah. And then the last question, which may just be a reiteration of some of the other stuff that you've said, and I always ask my guests this, is if it's somebody maybe that's starting, or maybe it's somebody that's been in business for a long time, that's an entrepreneur that just needs somebody to come along beside them and give them some advice.
Yeah.
What would be the best advice you could give somebody who's an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I'm going to give you one piece of advice from me and one from my partner and wife, Julie, who she gave me the same advice when we started the business. But for me, it would be find that intersection of what you're really naturally gifted at. It's no time to be humble. Everyone was gifted with certain things in life. And what you're really interested in. If your business could be in the crosshairs of those two things, you're really setting yourself up for success. The other thing from Julie is that make sure you have a business plan. 90% of entrepreneurs, they start out, they're passionate about it, it's what they've done, and maybe they even have good relationships, and they get going, and they just roll with it. They don't really have a business plan. Like you need to have a pro forma and think about what your expenses are going to be and what kind of revenue you need to generate, and have those targets every month. So I think that kind of business and financial discipline to start treating it like a business, most entrepreneurs, if we really look at it, it kind of looks like a kind of a lifestyle business, right? But we've tried to be more disciplined about treating it like a real business. So I would just encourage that kind of business discipline and acumen. And if you don't have it, find a mentor or find somebody else that has that. So the other one soft is kind of that passion and interest intersection. The other is very hard, is making sure you have kind of the financial and business discipline around it.
Awesome. That's great, Lee. Well, thank you for coming on.
Troy,
it's been amazing.
It's a pleasure. It was fun. You did a great job. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.